Greetings everyone, a little intro before the intro. In this video you're going to see me do a lot of things that are going to look like they're going to go well, and for the most part they will, but there's going to be some periods of disappointment, and I'm going to leave them in there just because this project was not difficult, but it ran into some interesting little things. So without further ado, here's the video, and just remember, when I'm sounding confident and so happy this is all going to work, there's disappointment around every corner in this one, so stay tuned. Greetings everyone, TJB Chris here, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got some Model 12 action in front of us, and this is actually going to be a bit of a bigger project, but I've really been looking forward to this. It's been like Christmas for the Model 12 around here. Let's take a look at why. So here we have various assorted components for the Model 12. Well, this is my TRS IO, my converted TRS NIC, but all the rest of this stuff is for the Model 12, so let's take a look at what we've got. So here we have some IDE cables, and they're going to be used to connect its neighbor, this Lo-Tech TRS-80 IDE adapter. This takes a Model 3 or 4 bus interface connection and allows you to adapt an IDE drive to it. And then we have a IDE to CompactFlash adapter, which is capable of being powered through pin 20 on the IDE connector, which this is capable of providing. We have a 16 megabyte CompactFlash card, since any bigger is wasted, and we have a set of nylon stands and screws. But what do we need those for? These are 3 of the Hans adapters for expanding the Model 12 bus and also adapting this Select IDE interface for the TRS-80 onto it. So let's take a look at the first 2 adapters here. These 2 together comprise a 3-slot bus expansion for the Model 12. And you get a net of 2 slots out of it because this adapter here allows you to connect into the existing single slot on the motherboard, and then with 2 40-pin cables adapt that over to the 3-pin or the 3 connector bus expansion. But that means the video card that currently populates the main board slot has to go here. So you can get it in additional to adapters, perhaps a high-res graphics card, my Lo-Tech IDE adapter, or something else in there, but you don't have enough room for a 68,000 and its matching memory board along with a hard disk adapter that would be necessary to make it useful. That said, there is apparently a Hans 06, I believe, that has been designed and hopefully becomes something that we can build ourselves or someone makes, and this may get swapped out for that. But in the meantime, I'm putting this one in. So that's these 2. And this one is an adapter, the Hans 02, to connect the Select IDE interface to the Model 12 expansion bus. Basically, this gives me a Model 3-4 style expansion bus, which allows me to use the Lo-Tech IDE interface. So what we're going to do is get this all plumbed into the Model 12. I'm going to have to find out where in the card cage I want to put it. I've got, like I mentioned, these nylon stands and things that I'm going to be using. I'll drill holes as necessary. Hopefully I don't have to drill too many. I'm going to try and drill it not at all if I can get away with it, but I don't think I'm going to get that lucky. But I really don't want to modify this machine too much if I can avoid it. So we're going to take the Model 12 apart, we're going to see what's in there, and see what I can do to wire it all up. And one more thing that I've got here, if I can get it, I've cobbled up myself a power cable. As I mentioned, the Lo-Tech can be used to power the CompactFlash interface, and that actually gets its power from here from the Hans 02 adapter. So I've fashioned up a cable to connect the 2 so that we can power everything downstream, IDE adapter and CompactFlash card, right from the Hans 02 adapter. So let's get the Model 12 apart and see what we're looking at. So let's get this Model 12 apart. You'll see here I've already disconnected the power cable. The ribbon hanging out the back is for the floppy emulator, so that's going to come out. Actually, the first thing we'll do is take the cover off. And apparently that just came right out. Okay, well, either way. So we can see no card cage in here, and the goal is, again, to drill this as little as possible. So what I'm going to do is we'll lock the camera down, disconnect the keyboard, and we'll take this apart. I'll speed it up, but this should give you an idea of how the machine comes apart. Here we go. Alright, so first things first, keyboard. Disconnect the keyboard and put it off to the side. And now what I'm going to do is, before we speed this up, I'm going to drop some paper towels down and slide this over just so I can kind of flip it around and not worry about digging up the case too much. we'll remove the screws, flip it back over, and see what we can do. So here we go. Card. There we go. The video board is out. Apparently that cable came off, bent one of the pins on it, so we're going to have to fix that. Gotta be more careful. Okay, there we go. There's the video card with the pins on bent. Actually, I'm pretty sure there's an effort to get serial numbers off these cards. Is that 501707 maybe? I'm going to have to look. I'll take a closer look. I know there's an effort afoot to see how many of these machines were made. Next time I have the 16 apart, I need to do the same thing. Oh yeah, because that's an 870, that's a TND part number. So I'm going to go with 501707 for the serial number. So this is the placeholder for the card cage. There's a fan attached at the top here. This is one of the things I was mentioning before. There's one of those 34 pin to 50 pin floppy adapters in here that I don't have a whole lot of slack on, but may need to move a bit. I think it can go the other way. The thing that's going to be most important here is when this card goes in and then the 240 pins come out, they're going to come up right about here, and I'm going to have to get this as close as possible. So I may move this to the other side of the card, and we'll see what happens. In the meantime, this looks like it will fit. So the goal here is I'm going to see if I can use some of the nylon stands to be able to put this into the case and not have to drill it. Even if I can get a couple in and have it held and then have the other two as just stands, possibly with some double-sided tape just to give them some rigidity on the bottom. You know, but if I can get all four in, that would be preferred, because then I can kind of get more rigidity here. So let's start getting the fan and the other parts out. Here's the card cage removed. This is the external floppy cable that will be going back on. In here we have the floppy adapter. I'm going to see if I can leave that, but I probably have to move it. That's okay, I can just move it to the other end. The biggest wild card is going to be how far this floppy cable will extend. So we'll see what happens there. Here you can see the expansion connector, and I'm actually going to take the opportunity to connect two of the cables and put the header in there. So we have to make sure a couple of things. So, one of the most important things with this is you have to get the orientation right. Now, in a lot of these they say 216 up, but of course in the Model 12 there's no up. However, the pins are labeled on the video card. You can see there's 2 here and there's an 80 here. So as long as I align this in the correct way, the card was going this way, then I know that pin 1 is toward the drive bay, and I can do that. It's very important to get the orientations correct on these. And in fact, when we're connecting the cards on this, you can see there's pin 1 labeled here as well. So when I'm inserting things in there, I have to make sure that I get those right as well. So we'll be extra careful. So I'm looking at this, and it's not going to be easy to see on the camera, but hopefully you can kind of see it. The cable's pushed back, so it leans back like this. Do this. So what I think I'm going to have to do is raise this up if I can, unscrew it, connect it, and then put it back down, because otherwise this goes at an angle, it's going to wreck the slot. So I think that's what we're going to do, and I've double checked there's 1 and 2 on the motherboard too. The pinouts are labeled, so I know I have it facing the right way. Unfortunately, this is just a little too tall to fit in the chassis as it is here, but it looks like with this lip and everything, once this is in place, it should work. So what I'm going to do is see if I can loosen up this end of this at least enough to get it up there without taking the entire power supply out, and maybe that will give us what we need. This moves up that much, so I'm going to see if I can do this, lifting this out of the way. That gives me a straight shot onto the expansion slot. Okay. Oh, perfect. Look at that. It's not putting too undue pressure. It has some play. Good, because I don't want to put undue pressure on the slot. So it's not, I don't want to do that. Okay, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. All right, that was easier than expected. Now I have to get those stupid screws back in. Okay, look at that. Okay, so little tip or trick there. If you find this won't insert because of the power supply chassis, you can lift it up for the main unit just by lifting these back 2 screws. You don't have to torque it too much. You know, don't, if you feel like you're putting too much pressure on, just take the front nuts off. But that worked. That's lovely. So let's take a look at the card cage, kind of dry fit it, and see if these will reach where I want to put the other board. Alright, so with the rough fit, I'm actually think I'm going to need these 40-pin cables to just be slightly longer. So get them out and under, and then they kind of run under the thing. If I get them slightly longer, I can run them under the back of the thing, the back of the card, and that's kind of what I want because the expansion cards need to come this way anyway, especially the video card. So I think what I have to do is get slightly longer 40-pin cables, and that should give me the length I need to be able to do that. And then what I'll do is I can stand this up, and I think I'm going to have to do my plan before. We're going to have to find a couple of places to post it, or I can't really drill it on that end, but we'll figure this out. It's going to be close, but once I get it in there and right, I think it's going to look good, and I think I can do it without moving this. In fact, I think it's going to be optimal to do it without moving this. So that's kind of where we are. So since we've established that I need longer cables, I've took the opportunity to get this in there. So this is the drive bay end of this cage. And what I've done is I used my nylon spacers to put the board in, but what I did was, at least for now, I'm going to attach 2 holes with the threaded nylon things, nylon screws. And then the other side are really just there for support, and what I'll probably do is just drop a little double-sided tape under each of these to kind of hold it into place and stop it from moving around too much. But theoretically, the idea is it really should just keep everything stable so the machine doesn't go. If I'm worried about it, I can drill a couple of holes into here, and you know, I may just do that too. I haven't decided yet. But I did, to make this work, I did have to move the floppy out a bit, the floppy adapter. So this should leave room to plug the cable in, and I should have room to be able to connect this connector. But it's going to be a little tighter, so we'll see how that goes. But I think I can do this, and with the way this should fit into the chassis here, I should be able to do that. Let's see what it looks like actually. So a little progress here. We've got the adapter for the Model 12 logic board expansion slot here, and I've made 2 custom length cables that I'll show you how these are all going to kind of run in a second here. But the key is K5 on the right and K6 have to line up with K5 and 6 here. And so what I've done is I did end up drilling this out. So I've got my holes in the bottom, and I've just attached it. And I did have to move the floppy drive controller, or the adapter I should say, over a little, but it does in fact fit. The cable fits on there, and you can see I took the top half of this carb cage off just so I could kind of work in here and drill it. But now I think what I'm ready to do is start putting it back together. So we're going to run this through, get the cables over, and I've already got these aligned so that 5 is on the left and 6 is on the right, just as it will be when the card cage is aligned in there. I got the ends on the IDC ends on the cables oriented so that I shouldn't have to do any weird twisting with the cables. So let's get this installed and see what happens. Okay, Okay, so now slot 1, closest slot, is going to be K1 here. That's where the video card's going to go. I want to make sure this is going to fit. And that looks very nice. I should be able to get the floppy cable under here. I'll do that before the card goes permanently in. Okay, I've made myself a little ground extension, and it's going to go from right here. I had to add a manual extension here for the other side because the video card ground was also too short. So I actually have done my fair share of remote car starter installs. So I actually had lying around some spare wire and hooks to adapt these without changing the machine's wiring. I may wrap these in a little electrical tape or otherwise do something with them to isolate them. I will definitely, at the very least, be zip tying them together so that they can't bump into things and jostle around. And so I think we're all ready to go here. I have the video hooked up. I'll just make sure that's down. And we have all the grounds in place. I'm just going to hook up the power here, and I think we're ready to try this out and hope we get a video. Please God, don't let this be the end of my Model 12. Okay. Didn't explode. Insert diskette. We have video. The card cage is working. That's perfect. So we have a functional card cage install. Now let's move on to the storage piece. Be careful because there's mains voltage in there. Okay. Storage. Alright, so as I mentioned before, I have a Lo-Tech TRS-80 IDE adapter, and I also have a Hanzo 2 adapter to connect them together. So what I did was something that, I mean, for now is going to preclude me from using really any other cards in the machine, but I can undo this, and I did this specifically in a way so I could do this. What I did was, the Hans adapter is brilliant in that it has holes lined up so that it can be attached by some sort of fastener that hold both these cards together and turn them into one card. So what I did was you'll see what else I did here. I used some project PCB, and just if you do this, make sure that the solder side, the side that has the copper lands on it for soldering, are away from your contact traces or you'll be unhappy. And I used the nylon fasteners, and I just cut these down to size, drilled them out, and made myself a little bracket to hold the cards together. Those of you that do this kind of thing and have 3D printers and the like might look down on my mechanics, but I'm pretty happy with it, at least for what I had available. The second thing that I did was, as you can see, the IDE CompactFlash card is sitting on the back here, and it's actually only held in by this one screw, and then I put stands in, and they're actually super glued to the back of the thing. There were no traces here where I did this, and then it's double-sided tape on the bottom on the board here, so it's not permanently attached. I didn't want to do anything permanent to the XT-IDE card, or the CF-IDE card, I should say. No, the TRS-80 IDE card. Okay. So power first. I have a cable I've just kind of bodged together here, and this is just going to run around here, and we're going to connect it here. I'm just going to make sure that I can't see on my fingers. Red is to 5V, red is to 5V, ground is to ground. Okay, that's that. Now for the bus. What I did was I made a custom length and specially origamied cable. It's not really origamied, it's just folded, so that I could attach the bus and attach the bus over here. See, it just lines right up. Push that down, push that down. Okay, that's looking nice. Okay, and the one for the back, we just connect right here. And it goes around. I'll just have to lift up my origami fold there. Right into there. I'm just trying to do this without bending pins or being a bull in a china shop like this, as I sometimes can be. Okay, so that is what it looks like. It's kind of a rainbow mess. And finally we have a CompactFlash card. And I've configured the jumpers on the CF-IDE adapter so that it takes its power from pin 20 of the IDE cable, because the Lo-Tech controller can feed that. and it's set to 5 volts. So that's it. That's the whole shebang. Again, pin 1. There we go. And actually the cabling does provide a little nice bit of insulation from the video. So now what we have is a installed storage solution. If I were to ever use something in this last slot, and actually this will give a little rigidity, if I was ever to install something in this last slot, the storage piece on the back here would come off, and I could relocate it to probably I would do either the back or the other side of the card cage here. So I think with all that done, this is pretty much installed and ready for the software. I think we need to get this thing back together. I'm going to do one more power up test with the disk drive connected and with this connected just to make sure that it boots up and we don't get any fire or sparks or anything. And then it's going to be time to put this puppy back together. I failed to take into account the cooling fan that is in there, and so if I put the cover on here, we'll just kind of mock this up. You can probably see where this is going. And so if I come in here with the fan, it actually runs up against the SD card there, or the CompactFlash card, I should say. Which means that this is not going to fit as is. So at the very least, I tried moving it over a slot into slot 3 here. Daisy chain Z80 cards, it matters because of the interrupt system, but I don't believe this card actually, it doesn't have a Z80 PIO chip on it, so I don't know that it's in the interrupt chain. So my wonderful cable folding here might still hold up for this, but I may actually have to take this adapter off of here after all that and either attach it to the back of the plate there, or probably more likely I'll see if I can attach it to this somehow, or at least to start I may just kind of attach it and leave it somewhat free floating so that I can kind of access it. We'll see what I do. Actually, another possibility is I might run it out to the back side here and connect it onto the back here so it's reachable through the expansion cover, and that actually might be a better move anyway. So that is where we are. We're going to do a little try fit now. This is great. I felt all great about myself. Best laid plans of mice and men, you know. Okay, the video card does fit, although any other taller cards will not fit. So that is actually going to be an issue if I want to put any other cards in. Alright, so we've removed the IDE to CF adapter. And this is definitely a CF. So now what we have is, I'm going to leave this in slot 3, but we're going to see, I think the fan will clear it. The nice thing is the bottom part is not where the spinning blade is, so at the very least we should be in pretty good shape. So I'm going to rough fit this and we'll see what it looks like. And here I was at the beginning of the video, thinking I was all hot shit because I got this thing all up into one card and it was going to be all purty. You know, that's what you get. Okay, let's see what we got here. Perfect. Okay. So that fits. It's close, but it fits. There's airflow. I'm going to call that good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to template out. Where is this? I want to make sure it's visible. We're going to template out right over here someplace since the connector's on this end. I'm going to run the cable right around to here. We're going to template out where I'm going to drill 2 screws, and we'll use the nylons to put that on there. And that will be the way to do this. I'm actually going to have 4 screw holes because I've got the little things super glued on the bottom of this. And then that's going to be that. That should give us a pretty good way to get the interface cable over to here and give us what we need. So let's see what that's going to look like. Okay, there we are mounted on the back panel. And this doesn't need much play, so I might be toward the top end of the expansion cage, but I should be in pretty good shape. Not really need to access it much anyway, but I should be able to get in and out. And that's really just to keep it close to here the wire runs and everything, and you can see in there, and the fan will now fit. So let's get this back together, let's get the fan mounted, and then we're going to do a power-up test before I start putting the case back together. Okay, we're back together. As you can see again, I have my ground bodges here for the additional grounding wires, and I've got my slack fit in there for the video. And I think it's time now that we have the cards in there and all wired up to do another power-up test to make sure it functions. And then when it does, we will put it all the way together, and I'm going to zip tie some of these grounds up so we don't have some loose metal floating around here, because that'll end badly if I'm not careful. And then we'll be able to kind of move on to the software side of this. Okay, I've connected the floppy emulator, and we're going to hook a keyboard up. So, got my drawer out here. Just going to do this, and now we're going to see if it actually boots up. That's good sound. Okay, we passed the checks. This is loading up here, if you can't see it. I don't want to move things while it's powered on. That's outstanding. So the machine is running. I've got all my cards in there. As you can see in there, I'm going to have to deal with these grounds because I want to make sure that all of the components for the CRT aren't going to come in contact with that. That would be real bad, trademark. But the cards are in, the fan is spinning, nothing's touching, and everything is coming up millhouse. So if I go over to the back, I have power on my SD, or my CF, I keep calling it SD for some reason. My CF card slot has power. I'm not sure what LED 1 means, but we'll have to look. But I at least do have power, so I'm going to make sure the LED configuration is correct, but we do know we're getting power from the interface here, and actually I'll take a little shot inside here. So as you can see in there, we've got the cards all running, and the video card and my CompactFlash adapter card, so we're doing pretty good. I think I'm going to tie up these grounds again, make sure that they're not going to interfere with the screen. So just for the sake of my own edification, I've wrapped these grounds. There's a little slack here so I can kind of move these as I need, but this way I don't have to worry as much about any of the issues I was worried about with the grounds being being an issue. I was afraid that with the floating metal and the CRT and all that stuff, I just felt like that was a recipe for disaster, and I know better, so why tempt fate when I can just solve my problem with a little bit of vinyl tape. So here we go. I think we're ready to reassemble. I've got to keep a close eye on this and make sure if I feel like I'm snagging anything, I abort, but I think we're good to go. So there's the Model 12 all reassembled. I didn't bother showing you the reassembly. It's the reverse of the disassembly, other than getting the case folded together. And you can see this actually came out exactly the way I wanted. So the CompactFlash card is accessible. You can see cable goes into the back very nicely, floppy cable coming out, my expansion floppy connector is there. All in all, I'm very happy with how this turned out. I really didn't want to drill it. I hate kind of permanently altering these things, but I feel like this was for the better, and long term, if I'm looking at one of the Hanzo 6A adapters as they roll around, this is kind of a temporary situation anyway, and this whole thing's going to get all changed out for that. So, alright, well, let's power it on and see what it looks like. Hey, wait a minute. Wasn't this thing put together in the last scene? Yes, it was. It's 2 weeks later. I've been banging my head against the wall. Against what turned out to be a stupid problem. Mainly because I can't search. That's not to say I didn't spend a whole lot of time searching, it just meant that I didn't come up with the right terms. But naturally I banged my head against the wall for a couple of weeks, as I do, and then finally decided it was time to ask people who probably know better than me. And so I put the question out to the Discord, and I got a lot of great information and responses back, and managed to figure it out. So the problem ended up being stupid, and I'm going to show you why that is, and the machine's apart so I can show you that. I'm also going to show you the symptom of the symptoms I was seeing. So basically after the last part where I put the machine together, I had a couple of different issues that I'm going to walk through here. So if you want to skip that and just get to the solution, just skip forward a couple of minutes to the next chapter in this video, and you'll see the solution and you'll get to see the thing work. In the meantime, this is what was wrong with it. Alright, let's power it up. So this is back in the state where it won't work intentionally. I'll show you what it was doing. Okay, so under CPM, we can see the driver load. So this is the Lifeboat CPM disk that's included with Xdriver. So it's bootable and has the drivers and everything, so no fuss, no muss. And I'm just going to run xtest, which is a nice IDE test utility that he's got on here, -im. And this is the result I was getting. No controller or drive identified, all the values 0. And just for the sake of my own sanity, same thing if I look for that's the primary device IM, master, and then the secondary device IS. So this is what I was running into. And just to show you what happens if I try to format the drive. We'll press yes. It appears to format, but if I go and try to look on one of the new drives, drive E, I get that, which is generally what happens if it didn't format. So, and that's all the drives do this. So that was the CPM side. Now let's take a look at the LS-DOS side. Okay, here we go. This version isn't patched. This disk isn't patched, so what is it? Oh, 7.49, okay. Okay, so let's just look at the devices here. You'll see we don't have anything in here. Okay. Okay, so it's going to ask the question, bus address 1. Total number of heads, I'm just going to call it 2 just for testing. 306. And I'll just have one head. Starting head 1. And that's it. It's just going to sit there. It'll sit there forever if you let it. While this sits here for a minute and does nothing. The interesting thing about this is right now, the configuration is on the Hanzo 2. I don't board the expansion board for the Lo-Tech. I have no jumpers bridged, all jumpers open. On the Lo-Tech, I have the jumper JP1 open, and that jumper determines the address of the IDE registers. Now the interesting thing is, actually the address is of the IDE registers. The documentation, if I read it right, for the Xdriver for CPM tells you that the jumper should be on. With the jumper on, I get the same response with both LS-DOS and CPM, but the activity light on the Lo-Tech card does nothing, no flashing, no nothing, with either operating system. If, however, I take the jumper off on the Lo-Tech card, JP1, then it will briefly flash, but still this happens. So that's where I am, and that's kind of what happened. I tried the other slot on the expansion board on the backplane just because I know that sometimes for interrupt chaining to work correctly, the boards have to be right next to each other. They can't have slot gaps. I wasn't sure if this board was part of that chain. I didn't think it was, but just in case. And I also, I tried a couple of other things too. At this point I had started to dig into driver sources to see. One thing that really led me astray was that this is a Rev 2 Lo-Tech adapter, and there are videos on YouTube of this working with the Rev 1. So then I noticed that the difference between the Rev 2 and the Rev 1 was the IDE register locations if the jumper is it's off or on. But in one of the jumper positions, the registers are different. And that led me to chase a waterfall, which was unnecessary because I wasn't sure if this version of the card had ever been successfully done. And the answer to that question is, of course it has, dumbass. Let's see what I did to make it work. As you'll recall from before, this is my Lo-Tech Hanzo 2 combination. I did not change out U2 on the Lo-Tech because on the Hanzo 2 the bus inversion logic is here, so I left that. The nice thing about that is that means I could just plug it into the Model 4 without having to remodify the Lo-Tech and test it out, which is what I did. I had this thing plugged into the Model 4, I was trying it with LS-DOS, it seemed to work, so I was banging my head against the wall. So what did I do? Well, I did two things. First, I populated J3 on Hanzo 2. Okay, now that's populated, and you may not be able to see here, but this jumper is off, it's just half on. I just put it there so I don't lose the jumper. Actually, I could have just taken this jumper and moved it down there. But anyway, this way I have both. And there's two other jumpers on the Hanzo 2, they are off. And then of course I'm using the Hanzo 2 to power it like before. So now, when I put this in there, it'll work. The other thing you may have noticed in the last clip was that I had a 16 megabyte compact flash card in there. For CPM to work, you need at least 128 with a configuration of the driver as is, so I swapped it for a 512 one. And I have a pair of these cards floating around, so what we're going to do now is we're going to set up the drive. I'm going to do a test, a format, and then we're going to test it out, and then I'm going to set up LS-DOS. So let's get the 12 back together again and try this out, but working this time. So we're back together, and just around back here again. This is what the install looks like from the back. And I mounted the Lo-Tech, I mounted the CompactFlash IDE adapter right on the back here, and I'm using a 512 meg SanDisk card. I managed to get these cards to work. So that's it, it's ready to button up. I'm going to put the cover back on, and we are going to format some CPM drives and try that out, and then we're going to try and format some LS-DOS drives and see how that goes. Alright, so we're booted back up with the Xdriver disk, and we're going to first see if we can see the card. Oops. And we do. We can see the number of cylinders, heads, all sorts of other great stats. So all of this is filled in. We've got the CF card model number and revision, all that good stuff. So this is very good. And now what we're going to do is we're going to give this a format, and we're going to see if it works. There we go. Yes. Helps if I get it right. Alright, and we'll just check out when it's done here. We'll just check out drive E. We'll just see if there are any files there. E, colon, no file. Alright, let's do this. Let's copy all the files from A to E. Alright, so we have files on E now. Let's take a look. And we do. Let's go to drive E. Okay. Let's run mexmap. And I want to do the, let me just forget the options here. I want IM. Okay, mexmap. In memory and editor. You can edit the what's in memory. You can edit F for the driver file on disk, and you can set the default settings in case you blow it up. And here you can see how the various CPM drives are mapped, where they are currently, and where they are. So again, the whole Xdriver suite and command line stuff is very cool. I could even remap some of these drives for the lower drives if I want and save them in the Xdriver file. I'm not going to do that. So that is CPM. Alright, I'm going to try and do this without getting too much into the frame. I just make sure I know that. I know the name of the driver you're going to use. J key, just like on my 16, it was refoamed, just very sensitive. Okay, plus address 1. Total number of heads, we're just going to do 2. We're going to test this out. I can always come back. 6, 1. Starting head 1. Do form 6. Drive 4. Disk pack name LS. So we'll call it, I'm going to call it part 1. Don't steal my super secret password. Oh, it's probably. I did this on the Model 4. That's good though. So I had tested this on the Model 4. This is the card I used, and the best part about this working is now means the driver sees the previous data. That says good things. So. Alright, now we have drive 0 and 4. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create the other 3 partitions. I'm going to format them, and what I'm going to do is transfer LS-DOS over to it and sysgen this disk, so essentially once it's booted from the disk, it'll flip the drives around so that the hard drives are the system drive. The hard drive is the system drive. So let's do that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is back up 0 to 4 sys. I think I can do IMV too. Alright, so there we are. Alright, let's do this. Let's do the swap. Okay, so now drive 0 is my system drive. You can hear it's not accessing the floppy. Alright, now what I don't know is, can I swap 5 and 1 even though 1's not enabled? Typing off to the side. I can, so now that's what I want. Alright, so I'm going to do this, sysgen equals 4. There we go. So now when I hit reset, it's going to boot from the disk. You can't boot from the Lo-Tech combination on these. Doesn't really matter. 08.26. I have to get my ass to work in 4 minutes. And now, oops, if you can type, there we go. You can see the hard disk is first. And if I look at drive 0, I have all my stuff here. So there we go. Now I have a working LS-DOS hard disk system. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to label these cards. This is my CPM one. Got the LS-DOS one in the back, and since I have the adapter accessible there from the expansion cover, from behind that, I can just pull it out and swap the drives. So that's it. Once again, shout out and thank you to the folks on the Discord that answered my questions and answered them in such a detailed fashion, especially to Hans, who designed the Hans 02, 03, and 04 boards that are in this machine. Those are very cool boards, and they turn what would be an otherwise neutered Model 12, because I don't have a card cage for it, and they're almost impossible to find, into something I can expand. And there is a 5-slot version of this that I've been following for a while, and I'm already on Ian's list as a definite customer. If he makes more of those, I'll be buying one of those too. So that's it. That's the hard disk expansion for the Model 12 with a little head banging. As you can see, I started out very enthusiastically with this video, and things went wrong, and I decided to keep some of the things that went wrong. Nothing was terribly major. The software thing, it's amazing how much one jumper can make, and just once I figured out how to search it, it fixed it up. So thank you again for joining me, and until next time, stay cool.